All right, Jack, let's talk world domination. Tell us about your business.
So when I was a student at university, I lived in a house of 10 people, and we were pretty terrible students, and we didn't know how to set up the bills for our house. And it was a weird setup in that we lived above a shop and it was split into a few flats within one house. And effectively at the end of 2 years of living there, we all got lumped with a big bill for about £3,000, and we were all sort of like, what do we do? And I kind of felt at that point for students and young people who don't know how to manage money, and me particularly being like not great at managing money, I think I wanted to find a solution that, from a kind of consumer's perspective, that helped young people to manage their money in a better way. And so the idea kind of was born then, but I didn't take action for a while. I then left university, got a job in the Met Police as a police officer in London.
How long ago was this idea? Because you don't look a day over 22.
So yeah, it would have been 2014, so 7 years ago. And yeah, so I left university, moved to London, moved into a house share, so similar situation, but less of us. And the same thing happened. There was 3 or 4 of us, I think, in the house, and no one wanted to take control of the bills. Then letters start coming in, and we were all trying to work out who pays what. And again, the same situation happened. So at that point, I felt, right, there needs to be a solution for this. And initially, it was about helping young people to sort of get the best deals for their bills. And then we kind of stumbled across this concept of having a single monthly payment for all of your kind of household bill essentials. And that's where we've taken the business really to start with, is, how can we help young people to manage their money? And the best way is, as far as we're concerned, you get paid on the 25th of the month, and then on the 26th, all of your money comes out for all of your bills and you're done. And that's kind of how it was born.
Okay. And you mentioned you left uni, you worked for a little while. What did you do? What was the journey to get to Billing Better?
Yeah. So I was working full-time in the Met Police for 5 years, and there was an overlap from when I started the business to when I was still working there. And really it just came about from that experience of going through it twice. And then I didn't really feel any sort of barrier to just going for it. I just kind of felt like, what have I got to lose? I'm working full-time. It's not expensive to set up a business. I can just set it up. I knew people within my own inner circle who had created websites and things like that. So I just felt like, right, let's just go for it and see what happens.
Very cool. And then when you got started with this, was it literally you quit your job and you started working on it, or was it whilst you were working?
Yeah, there was an overlap. There was an overlap for a couple of years. So it was tough, particularly in the line of work that I was in terms of I would be dealing with emails and then out to 999 calls, chasing people round and still thinking about, has this been done? Has that been done? So it got tougher the deeper I got, and I always had the idea and plan to leave at the right point, but I wasn't sort of like, I didn't leave as soon as I could. We hired people first. So we hired developers and customer services people to kind of look after the nitty gritty and help to develop the platform whilst I was still working to just sort of give me a bit of focus to drive growth, which is ultimately still what I will try to do today.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you fund it, if you don't mind me asking?
Self-funded it.
Wow.
Yeah. So not through any massive, cash in the bank, just try to be as sort of lean as we could. So, our initial costs were a website, hosting, emails, all that kind of stuff, which was, not a lot. And then as we generated revenue, I mean, a lot of it came down to, we made a decision that the product was effectively a subscription-based product. So you pay a monthly amount for your bills, and within that monthly payment is a subscription that comes back to us. Right. So by getting to 50, 100, 200 houses, all of a sudden we had this monthly recurring revenue that was coming in that allowed us to get 1 member of staff, 2 members of staff. So by having that ability to work full-time in another job, it allowed me to not have to, it wasn't all or nothing, basically. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah. And what you've basically described, I mean, you've described the bills aspects of it, but essentially it's a software as a service.
It is,
tech company. That's what you have.
Exactly. And I suppose fast forward to where we are now, we looked at, and I'm sure we'll go into this in a bit more detail, but we do class ourselves as a SaaS product now, more from the letting agent product that we have, and we I suppose we're trying to disrupt a pretty archaic industry around utility bills.
Yeah.
There are, of course, innovators in here. You look at the likes of Bulb Energy, Octopus Energy, these big companies who are trying to shake things up. And I suppose we're trying to aggregate, which is tough because we're bringing stuff together, but also make that service better for consumers. So it's more than just, here's your 1 monthly payment. Can we do things like bring in your energy usage and tell you when you can be on better deals and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I 100% class ourselves as a technology-based business.
Yeah.
And the challenge for us is how can we use technology to remove and break down some of those archaic processes, if you like.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a solution to a problem that seems to be everywhere.
I think so. And I think that's for me, that's what it is. I've experienced it twice as a consumer. I'm a customer myself.
Yeah.
Which I think is, super important to feel that value. And real problem and hopefully a real solution.
And when you've been developing the product, and the processes and, there's a lot that goes into this. It's not simply a case of just collecting a couple of bills together.
No.
There's a huge amount that comes with it. What are the challenges? What's the greatest challenge that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, payments, 100%. In terms of, like you say, we're collecting money from people and then we're distributing funds out to suppliers.
Yeah.
So if I'm collecting £100 from you, or let's say £300 from you for all of your bills, I've got to send some to gas, some to electric, some to water, some to council tax, some to internet. Now, once we got to 100 customers or 100 houses, all of a sudden we've got 100 people paying us £300 a month, for example, into a pot.
Yeah.
And we then had to work out, how do we get that money to where it needs to go? How do we keep an eye on it? How do we make sure none of it's getting lost anywhere?
Yeah.
Particularly if a council tax company, for example, or local authority will take money from an account and all of a sudden they might increase the direct debit or the water, so how do we ensure that if someone increases a payment, that doesn't impact everyone else's bills?
Yeah.
So we focus really heavily on building out a solution that controls the payments angles. That's been our hardest battle.
Yeah.
So what we did about 18 months ago is we went from that model of all the money going into one account and crapping ourselves every month to make sure that everything was all right, to creating a bank account for each house that signs up with us. So the money goes into that bank account and then we schedule the money out to the suppliers from there. And that's that's scalability really for us because
there's so much that could go wrong. It's all the different systems that all of these different providers have.
Yeah.
And the processes that they go through. Yeah. Have you managed to automate this or are you still kind of...
Yeah, we have now. Yeah. Wow. So we've automated the money in and the money out.
Okay.
The challenge we have is going forward, and we're very, very, very close now to like days away from having the final sort of solution to it, which is taking a long time. But the challenge, like you say, is different companies take money in different ways.
Yes.
So we want to have full control over money going in and then how the money is paid out. So we want to be able to send it like a bank transfer to each of the suppliers.
Yeah.
But like some suppliers, internet or TV license, for example, they only accept money via direct debit. So we've had to build a system that allows that bank account for your house to pay out in different ways. And that way it's a fully automated process.
Okay.
I'm nearly there.
That just sounds like such a difficult technical challenge to overcome.
Yeah.
Is there stuff breaking all the time that you have to keep fixing, keep on top of, or is it been relatively plain sailing?
Yeah, I mean...
And how do you go about fixing it?
Yes.
It happens.
I don't know about breaking. I mean, I think, I'm a non-technical founder.
Okay.
So I'm not, someone who has a development background, but I have tried to learn as much as possible without going too deep. My understanding from how we do things in terms of the product team is they are very, very kind of test focused before we push things live. So we probably move a little bit slower as a result of that. But we don't have that many scenarios where things are breaking, as far as I know.
Okay.
So I think we take that kind of test-driven approach rather than, we talk a lot. It's quite sexy for people to move fast.
Yes.
And that's
break
great.
things.
That's great. Move fast, break things. But I think for us, as we're sort of starting to scale, we've taken the approach of let's get things right and then stop the tickets
it's
coming
people's
in.
bills. It's people's lives.
Exactly.
It's their electric bill.
Exactly.
If you get that wrong, the electricity gets cut off.
Yeah, and people lose faith in an industry that they already hate. So where we try to disrupt the feeling of having to pay your bills and hating every company that rings you about your bills.
Yeah.
How can we change that and make this a nice way to pay your bills and a company that's actually on your side and you want to be on their side.
Yeah.
And it's not easy when things go wrong because you just slip into that. Oh, these guys are just another bills company who are ripping me off.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Absolutely. And I completely understand that. There's another thing I want to understand.
Yeah.
Which is I've completely understood the idea that you're simplifying things for people.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm guessing, knowing you, that there's probably going to be a lot of other perks that users get being part of your service. So because imagine, for someone that's, going through this process of managing their bills, they probably think to themselves, it's not that big a deal. I'm just going to set up direct debits for everything.
Yeah.
And I can manage it all myself. No problem. Why should I pay this company that extra bit of money? What would you say to them, and what do you bring to the table as the kind of value add?
Yeah, so a few things. Firstly, I'm quite clear as to what I think the biggest USP for the business is, and it's about having this single monthly payment and single point of contact for customer services for all of your bills.
Right.
So a single monthly payment is really important for me because I particularly when I was in London, your first job, you get your money, and then there's never enough. What is it, the phrase? There's never enough month at the end of the money or something like that. You get to 5 days before you get paid and you're like, oh God, I've got a direct debit coming out tomorrow for my phone bill, so I can't go out tonight. That was my biggest thing around. I wanted to provide this solution where you get paid on the 25th of the month and on the 26th, everything goes out, which means that for you, mentally, what money you've got left for the rest of the month to pay your bills, and you're not going to get that money anxiety a week before you get paid thinking, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the biggest point of contact. And of course, you can go out and you can set your direct debits up individually if you want to, and that's cool. But the other side to it is the customer services element. So we want to be a kind of single port of call for any need you've got, whether your internet goes down, whether you're, want to know how much energy you've used. We want to be the customer service team that you go to where you're going to get good contact. You're not going to be ages on hold, and that's difficult as we grow to get that right. And how can we improve that user experience for people, because they know, I know, that if you have to deal with something, if you get a letter through the post, it's going to take you best part of an hour to be on the phone on hold, waiting, talking. So I think, to answer your question, the two things are single monthly payment to reduce kind of money anxiety, and a trusted and good customer services team who can actually solve issues for you. So, what we want to get to, I suppose, is a mobile app where you can ping a question whilst you're at work, and then we'll get back to you without you having to, spend all the time on hold or whatever. That's, I think, where we want to get to.
Absolutely. And in essence, it sounds like you're giving people their most valuable commodity, which is their time.
Exactly.
You're saving them time.
Yeah.
In having to deal with all these things. And I guess if you think about the business as a whole, you've gone from a man with an idea, you've found developers, and now you're building up, staff and a team, and I can't give you enough office space, which is a problem we have at the moment. How have you found managing people? Because that's the hardest part. And has past experience, helped with that at all?
Well, definitely the hardest thing that I've had to deal with in terms of right now, we've just gone in the last 6 weeks from a team of 14 to a team of 22.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I'm now at this point personally where I want to focus my time on growth. Like, I sit there thinking, I want to be driving things forward, but actually now it's the point where I need to be empowering the people, the kind of heads of department, if you like, to be doing the right things for me. And I'm finding that tough because it's taking a lot of my time. And, you know, I mean, before I came in here now, I just put a daily hour in my calendar to say, drop everything for sales for me, so that I have an hour focused on growth. And I think that will satisfy my weird desire to just focus on growth for an hour a day. But in terms of, people, it's tough. I think it's hard to find good people. We've got lucky a couple of times. We've got unlucky a couple of times. But I think that my big thing is, if you find the right person, you've got to keep them and do whatever needs to be done. And I think that whether that's money, which a lot of the time, like it or not, that's, you know, what keeps people in a job, whether that's giving them the right freedom or perks or whatever. But my basic kind of mantra to staff is, if you find someone who you want to keep, make sure that they have no reason to leave. And that's what we're trying to implement really now. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And it's just kind of finding that balance of the right perks with what makes sense for the business.
Exactly.
And you know, making an environment that people enjoy being in.
100%.
And all those types of things.
Yeah.
And you know, so the people is the one side of things. Your business is a business that's very, very process heavy. When you've been putting together these processes, and especially now that you have to introduce people into those processes, what kind of tools have you used? What's helped you to put that stuff together?
Because I'm a non-technical founder, I've had to find these kind of no-code solutions to help me with automating certain tasks. So I've used a lot of initially Webflow. So I taught myself how to use something called Webflow, which is kind of like a design your own website type thing. So you can go on there, drag and drop and all that for your website. So I was the one who was in control of the website for a long time, mainly like the marketing sites, the landing pages and all the pages that come with it. And then the application that sits behind the website, the developers dealt with, but I didn't want to bog them down with the kind of basic marketing site, even, you know, there's an argument to and from it. But so I used that to teach myself how to build websites. And then as we got into more sort of process heavy stuff, I use Zapier quite a lot, or Zapier.
Okay.
So it's pretty good in that you can connect various applications based on things happening.
So it's an API connection tool, basically.
It is, So you can, you know, create a spreadsheet, and then once you change a word in a spreadsheet to yes, for example, it then triggers actions in other applications. So we still use that quite a lot in terms of, you know, you can connect it to our back-end database. So if, for example, someone places an order and they say, I want to have Virgin Internet, we've still got an automation now that then sends it into Virgin Internet directly to say, please place this order, here's their details, etc. So that's a big one, very big one, because it connects with so many tools. And then I suppose what we're trying to do now is, I suppose we're trying to shift away from that to have these more, you know, development based processes. And that's where we are now, in sort of trying to whittle those down to spend time on getting the developers to do the task for us in that regard.
And how are you finding dealing with developers? Because that's a whole other language and ball game, and
tough, really tough. Like, I'm really lucky in that our developers, they are great, like really good at what they do. I think that, you know, they always laugh at me because when we talk about a task, I always end with the same thing. How long was it going to take? Like, you know, and they go, well, and I go, give me an answer. And they go, well, and, you know, I've not quite, so, you know, how do you deal with that? You either learn how to understand how long these things are going to take. And how do you do that?
Which is a dark art sometimes.
Like I've tried to do courses online to basically become a developer.
Okay.
But then I got to the point where, and to be honest, I started it lockdown 1, and I thought, do you know what? Great use of my time. I'm going to become a developer. And then, which I think, you know, some people could probably, you know, they could definitely do it. Like if you had the time. But then I got to the point where, you know, the balance was outshifting. So I'm spending too much time here and the business needs me here. So then I couldn't do it all, which was a real shame. But I have a basic understanding as to how developers work, and our head of product is my brother. So I can have very frank conversations with Tom about, you know, how long things take and what he thinks. And he has that. He's a front end developer, UX UI designer, so he's like a super talented guy and is able to fill in the gaps.
That's a nice bit of luck.
Nice bit of luck. Yeah. I mean, he's great, and he just fills that gap for me in terms of bridging the knowledge, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And your dad is also involved in the business, so this is a full-on true family business.
Yeah, it is. And why? I think when I started the company, I looked at my weaknesses, and I think my weaknesses are I'm quite impulsive, and I can be a bit rash at times. Not in terms of like aggressive, but decision making. Like if I'm not happy with something, then I'm quite happy to just stop it and move on from basic things to staff. And we've had a few situations where we've gone with the gut decision, rightly or wrongly, and for hiring and firing. So I looked at my own weaknesses and thought, I need people who I can implicitly trust, and B, people who fill the gaps that I don't have. So when I first started, I brought on my dad, David, and Will, my best mate from school, and David, my dad, because he's much more experienced and methodical, but also has a deep sort of B2B skill set in terms of sales. Will, again, much more methodical and thought process orientated than I am, but again had that nice balance of a bit of experience with David plus or dad plus a little bit of more raw sort of intensity from Will and I. And I think the big thing is trust. Like I trust them with anything. We've had some pretty tough moments as a three, when we disagree with things and when things don't go right, it challenges those relationships. But at the core, we all love each other. So, there's no there's no worry around, is there any ulterior motive? There's not. We just want to do the right thing for each other and for the business. So it works.
I mean, without going too much into details and stuff, but dealing with those darker moments when you're working with other people is one thing, but your family, people that you go home to or meet on a regular basis with family connections.
Yeah.
How do you wrestle? Like how do you deal with this stuff?
So we try to, when we see each other outside of a work environment, particularly with other members of the family, we try not to sort of take ourselves into a corner and talk to each other about random business things, and we get told off if we do that. But when things get tough, I think, there have been a few points where it's got really tough, and we've all kind of stepped away and gone, like, it's tough. But at the same time, I think what it comes back to is, because we have that solid base of friendship and family, we're able to just sort of draw a line and move on. But it has been tough. And I often, I've been asked a few times and thought about myself, would I do it again? If I were to go again, would I do it with family? And I don't know why I brought this up, because my answer is I don't know.
Wow, this is not going to end well. I won't be sending your dad there.
Well, I mean, I think, look, 100. I think right now the way I feel about it is the positives way outweigh the negatives. Like way outweigh the negatives.
Right.
However, it's intense, and I think if I had the opportunity to go again, having already done it, I might look at doing something else. But right now, the positives outweigh the negatives.
I can imagine. The thing is, when you have people that are working for you, because you're the boss and you pay the bills, the tendency to tell you what's real is a little, like, the probability of them doing that is a little bit lower. But when it's your dad and your brother, who you've probably been fighting with in some way, shape, or form since you were little kids, right? They'll tell you straight. And that's a really powerful thing.
It is.
And also, I can imagine if the relationship is not that great to begin with, it's not the best thing. But you guys have, I've seen you guys together. You guys obviously have strong relationships.
We do, We're very fortunate in that regard. And I think, from our perspective, we're quite close, all of us. And like you say, we can shoot pretty straight with each other. I think that's a lot of value in that.
Absolutely, mate.
Yeah.
There's a point that you hit upon where you were describing you wanted to learn a little more about coding and a few other bits and pieces. One of the things that I really promote, like it's something I've done and you've done, and a few other founders that I've met have done, is kind of develop a really shallow understanding of a broad range of skills. You know, I call it, you know, being 6 out of 10 at a lot of things. And like, you know, a little bit of graphic design, a little bit of this, a little bit of development, a little bit of everything, because that basic understanding of lots of different things, it kind of completes the puzzle itself. Because you know a little bit about coding, you know enough to have a conversation.
Yeah.
You know a little bit about web development, you know enough to have a conversation, and all of those elements. And I'm just wanted to learn, you know, what your process is for that, or if you've just done it randomly.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is kind of the design element. Like I think having, you know, we all love these really like nice, clean designs of applications and devices, you know, like iPhone.
And your site looks great. So
Thank you.
I've spent some time on it.
Well, I actually did the most recent marketing site. Yeah, but that, you know, that again is just through, like I found a template on Webflow
and just made the changes.
Like it's not difficult. You just need to know where to look and how to do it. Exactly. And if there's, you know, I suppose what I've done is throughout the journey, I've not had £1 million in the bank to go and hire these great guys, and I've had to work out how to sort of, you know, jump ahead without spending loads of money. So initially I was sort of taking the time to learn these different things, and you know, design, as I say, is a big one, because not only websites but marketing materials. Like one of the first ways in which we got customers was we would give student sports teams at universities images to share on their social media. And they would be like, sign up to Billing Better and you get free Netflix or whatever. And all the clubs would earn money from that. And I was creating these images for like hundreds of teams. Yeah. And, you know, we could have hired someone, but I didn't have any money to hire someone. So I had to do that in order to get the marketing out there, to get the sales, to then invest it later on. Yeah. So I think my process has always been do what you can. And learn what you can and be open to learning what you can. Yeah. But if I find it too hard or too time consuming, I suppose things have changed. Now I can find someone to do it. And maybe it's, you know, the resilience of having to do it myself before that you just plow through. Yeah. I don't know if that answers the question. It's
kind of one of those weird things, because initially you have a lot of motivation to do everything.
Yeah.
And then as time marches on and you kind of take people on, like my role has kind of narrowed now. Yeah. So, you know, I run a couple of companies. So CoTribe, and then there's Financial Juice. Yeah. And with Financial Juice, my job primarily now is product development, and I do a bit of marketing work, and that's about it. Okay. But early on, I was the analyst. I did product development work. I did, you know, the marketing. I did the logo design. I did all of those types of things. Yeah. Like literally everything, the website work, you know, and obviously we have a core developer, CTO, who does the core of it. Okay. But I was spending a lot of time with that, and it meant I learned a lot of things, but I spread myself quite thin. And then as time goes on, you kind of focus and find what your area is and where you bring the most benefit. But I feel like it's a really powerful, especially for like you've hired people, I've hired people, but a lot of people don't want to hire people at all. And if you want to be a solopreneur, you've got to literally just develop these skill sets. Yeah. And like one of the things I really push is every month, if you dedicate 20 hours, which is literally an hour every working day to learning a particular skill, like if you spent 20 hours on graphic design, you'd get pretty handy with Adobe Illustrator. Yeah. And these types of things. Spend a year, one skill a month. Yeah. You can pretty much learn everything you need, you know, on a basic level. I think
that's the thing, isn't it? Like you have to be disciplined and organized to do that. And I think that, you know, that's why I said, like, I just literally put that in my phone before we came in here, thinking about, you know, how can I do it? And I think for me, we all work differently, and I just need the structure. Yeah. Whether that's me doing that, giving that structure, or someone else telling me you need to do this. Yeah. But yeah, like I completely agree. You know, an hour a day is not, you know, it's not unachievable, is it? And I think it's just about finding the balance of being able to do these things and commit to it. Yeah. Because like with coding, you know, for me, committed to it a couple of hours a day, and then it was an hour a day, and then it's half an hour a day, and then it was, oh God, I can't do this anymore. And I've got like a weird amount of knowledge around the very small things. But yeah, no, I agree. I do agree. Yeah. Okay. It's just about putting it into action.
One important thing you just mentioned there is the discipline. Yeah. So I'm curious, how do you manage yourself Like,
Yeah.
do you have a routine? Do you get up at a certain time of the day? How do you kind of look after yourself? How do you optimize?
Yeah. So getting up, I've never been great at. Like, I'm a snooze 3 times type of guy. So I do, got better at it, and get up relatively reasonable. Get up about 8 o'clock every day.
Right.
Get in here for about 9. But what do I do? I mean, I think really for me, I'm quite, I think as we all are, very self-motivated, very like know what the short, mid and long-term goals are.
Yeah.
And I know what I need to do to get to those goals. Yeah. So in terms of sort of, I think if you can motivate yourself to be able to want to do things at all costs,
sure,
then everything else falls into line. The challenge that we have, anyone has, is balancing your life with your work.
Yeah.
And that is something that is of course tough. I try to, when I'm here in the office, which is a super important thing about having an office, when I'm here, I work. When I'm not here, I don't work. So when I go home, I bring all my stuff in here. My computer's here. I have a laptop, but I don't really use it. And when I'm at home, I switch off, and I try to switch off. Yeah. Obviously, phone, emails, everything comes through still, but I try to, where possible. My other half, she might disagree slightly. Yeah. But I try to focus on other things and bring other things into my life outside of work. I play cricket, which amazingly for me brings a lot of relaxation because I can focus fully on it and I don't think about work. And it's an all day thing. So Saturday, or and training, and it allows me to just completely stop thinking about work and start thinking fully about that. And I think that has sort of given me a different level of focus this time to be able to switch off and almost recharge. I'm probably thinking as intensely about cricket as I am about work, but I think it weirdly has helped me to sort of settle down and then focus more throughout the week. But
interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a hobby thing. Yeah. It's only sort of the last 6 months or less than that I've found that.
Okay.
Before that.
So did you play cricket before? Or?
I did, but I've not played properly for about 5 years.
Okay.
So, which is sort of how long I've been running the business. They're not related, but I think having a hobby and having something to really take your mind off things. I know it sounds like a bit of a basic thing to say, but for me, it definitely has helped.
Especially because we've got this culture that's developed with like the Gary Vaynerchuks and these guys who are like grind, sleep 4 hours a day, grind all the time. I've tried to do that. I don't find it very effective.
I can't do it.
It's just it just makes you miserable.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like there are times where you have to do it.
You have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But
it can't be the daily. It can't be how you spend your existence.
No.
It's got to be when, because we all kind of, whether we know it or not, follow this 80-20 kind of a rule where we get work done. And then as the deadline gets closer to something, we're spending way more time on it because we haven't done enough. It happens to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's just finding that balance point, because there is going to be times where things have to be out of balance because you're trying to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
But you can easily, and I've seen it with lots of people where they spend so much time working on the business side of things, all the other things, kids and everything else, kind of fall by the wayside and they lose those connections.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the difficult thing. And as my other half, Emily, she would say, that I work too much, and her mum would say that I work too much.
Yeah.
And the way that I justify it in my mind is, obviously I'm trying to create something for the rest of our lives that's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And I see the daily progress and I see the end goals that they don't see. So sometimes it's hard for them, I suppose, to see that bigger picture thinking.
Yeah.
And maybe it's naive of me to be as much of a dreamer. But as I say, like I see the progress, I see how we're going to get to where we need to get to, which other people don't. And I think the other one is friends. Like I've got quite a big group of friends, and I've had to really try to focus on which groups that I sort of give myself to, if that makes sense, and try to be there when I'm with them, but accept that I'm not going to be WhatsApping everyone every day in the group chats. Like I don't, I might go on it once or twice a day just to check things, but it's those things, isn't it, that I think suffer the most.
Yeah.
and ultimately your real friends are going to be your real friends, and that's great. But yeah, I think you're gonna lose some, aren't you? Ultimately, which
And I know you're getting married pretty soon as well.
Next week,
Which is,
yeah.
oh my giddy gosh, that's really exciting.
yeah.
And hopefully there'll be some kids and stuff on the way
I hope so,
in the
yeah.
near future.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, for me personally,
Yeah.
kids are a great thing because it depends on the kind of person you are,
Yeah.
but it forces you to have that level of balance. And it forces, I work hard. I'm trying to create, some cool stuff as well. But I know that I have to be at home at a certain time to spend time with them. And it forces you to disconnect. It forces you to turn that phone on. And I don't always succeed. I try my best. And I kind of have got into the habit of removing YouTube and Facebook and stuff like that from my phone.
Right. Yeah.
And then, I'll do that for a while and I'll be really good with my phone. And then, something will come up and I'll need YouTube for something. And then it stays on for a little while. Then you see those hours creeping up.
Yeah.
And I'm doing research for work.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. You've got to, once you have kids, especially, you've got to find that balance.
Because, of course. Yeah.
The important stuff will fall apart if you don't kind of
exactly.
make sure
your
you look
priorities
after it.
change, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the exciting thing, I think, to come. Hopefully,
100%. So does that mean you're just about to get married?
Yeah.
The next year or so, you're going to be working your ass off before you have kids, or how are you thinking about it? What's your mindset?
My mindset is around. So we have a choice to make, I think, and I think we've had this conversation before around, do we want to grow to be sold?
Yeah.
Or do we want to grow to be like a self-sustainable beast
Yes.
that allows me to step back a little bit, maybe?
Yeah.
That's the challenge that we've got. And I think, do I put a time limit on that? No. Are there opportunities for us for the first option? Yes.
Yeah.
Is that potentially a more attractive option? Yes. But in terms of kind of, I think you've got to, and I think this is what we've said before.
Yeah.
You've got to build a business for the long run.
Yeah.
But have your eye on the acquisition option.
Yes.
And I think that's where we've got to focus on the long run, and then if it comes, it comes. And I think over the course of the next year, I will be continuing to do what I'm doing. We've got targets for the end of this year that will put us in a pretty strong position.
Right.
But they are targets, so I hope that we hit them. But it's not, it's not a do or die type scenario. And that, I suppose, that's the thing that I've had to try to deal with myself, is my own ambition for growth and to drive things forward versus what we need to do.
Yeah.
And we don't always need to run at 150 miles an hour if we're still steadily growing and everything's going okay. So, I think to answer your question, yes, I'm going to be continuing to go full steam ahead. And we'll wait and see where that takes us.
Okay. Very cool, man. And how has the pandemic affected you? I'm imagining other than
interesting
people being together.
Yeah, it's been interesting for us because from like a revenue and business perspective, our customers have stayed in their homes. We've not really had a huge impact around people not paying. There has been a slight spike, and we've had to sort of mature our own processes for how we manage money from customers. But effectively, we're kind of very tied to the lettings industry. So if people are moving home, then great, we get more business. But if people are not moving home, then at the same time, we keep the business because they're still using our service. So I think ultimately, we didn't get the growth that we wanted when lockdown 1 happened.
Yeah.
We have grown. I mean, since lockdown 1, I think we're 4 times the size in terms of customers since then.
Wow.
Which is obviously great.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors that have kind of come as a result of that, or have caused that. But so from a revenue perspective and from a customer perspective, we've been really fortunate to do really well. Obviously, there's so many industries out there who haven't, but we've been lucky enough to continue to grow. I think part of the challenge is staff working from home and how you deal with that, how you monitor them. We've always had staff working from home since the start, so employee number one, Olivia, has always worked from home. She's really great. And we've got another lady, Sean, who works from home for us as well.
Yeah.
So that in terms of like moving towards that, not been a big deal for us really. We try to allow people to kind of have the flexibility to come in if they want and work from home if they want. But yeah, bottom line is really lucky to grow and just trying to adapt to different people working in different
environments.
Places. Yeah.
You mentioned something interesting just there as well. Olivia.
Yes.
So your first employee
Yes.
outside of the family.
Yeah.
Or did the family come after?
No, she was the first employee before any of the family.
Oh, before any of the family?
Yeah,
Okay.
so myself, David and Will were effectively like the directors, but
Okay.
we were still working our own jobs when Olivia was hired.
So employee number one is probably the most important decision for most businesses because that employee sets the tone of how things go and how you feel about the employee-employer relationship, especially if it's the first time you've hired someone.
Yeah.
And, you know, what was that experience like for you, kind of making that decision? Did you make it quickly? Because you seem more like me, impulsive, which is like, hey, okay, cool, you're on board. And then, or was it more thought out?
So we kind of cheated in some ways because when I spoke at the start about the first sort of reason for starting the business, the 10-person house, she lived in that 10-person house with me. So she had a daughter and was due to go back to work in a school, but she didn't really want to. She wanted to be at home with her daughter.
Right.
So I said to her, look, you know, you're going to be at home. I know you. I trust you. I think that, you know, you could be really great for this. You've got a good skill set around. She was teaching primary school kids. So she's, you know, the competency levels were there.
Yeah.
And it was just the kind of opportunistic thing. So she was like, yeah, I'd be interested in doing that because it allows me to stay at home with her daughter. So we just kind of threw everything in. She's got a huge amount of knowledge. She's gone through the pain of all of the spreadsheets and all of the manual processes. And now she is at a point where she kind of, you know, has a deep level of understanding for everything, which is great. And also nice for us because she is a young mum at home and we have 2 other young mums working for us from home now as well. And I think it's nice for us to try to support young mums to continue to work when they want to, because not everyone is fortunate enough to not work. So we quite, you know, we want to try and support that area of the business and that skill set, because just because you're a young mum and you, like, lots of people I think feel as though having a child really hinders them and their career, but it doesn't have to as far as we're concerned. And I think that's been quite nice to be able to support these people.
That's really great, mate. That's really great. I guess, you know, as we kind of wrap things up, one last question I'd want to ask you is, you've been through the process now. You've gone from having a job, building a business and, you know, growth and employing people and everything else. What advice would you give to someone that was you a few years ago who's still at work, has an idea? What would you want them to focus on? How do they become you?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily advise that. Look, I think my own journey has kind of fallen into place in quite a nice way. I spent 5 years in the police, and what that enabled me to do is I put me in situations where I had to trust my own instincts and what I think is right. And if you don't get those things right, you're in trouble. Like whether that's physically in trouble through some sort of a hostile situation, or you know dealing with the emotional side of things. So I was in a unique situation where I did a job for 5 years that allowed me to have enough self-belief where I believe that if I think I'm doing the right thing, then it's the right thing. And I'd been in enough situations where I felt as though that was right. And obviously I get things wrong all the time still, but I had that self-belief and self-confidence in myself to try something. And if it went wrong, I didn't really care. To add to that, I don't really care what people think about me too much. So when you launch a business and you have to tell people about it, it can be quite a nervy thing to tell your family or friends, and they give you that kind of, oh yeah, is that what you're doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, they look down at you a little bit, and I never felt as though that impacted me. If people were asking me what I'm doing, I tell them, and if they, if they look down on it, then I wouldn't really take much notice of it. So I think those two factors of me personally having those traits allowed me to throw myself into something. I don't think that there's a financial barrier for starting a business in terms of, have you got the desire and the inner sort of belief to do something whilst you're working? Because you'll always, you can, if you want to do it, you can make the time.
Yeah.
So my advice, wrapping things up, would be, if you believe in yourself and you have the confidence and desire to do it, go for it, because there's nothing that can really stop you, in my opinion.
Mate, that's a great note to end on. Thanks so much for coming along and putting up with me for a little bit.
Yeah.
And talk soon. Thanks
yeah, great. No worries.